I'm going to document my experiences as a baby potter. I set up a shed out in our backyard. We had it built. Took about 4 months for the whole process. Ordered a kiln, which is set up over there. And last summer, I got a speedball, which I did a little bit of practice on and decided I would rather do this at home than in a studio, which was costing me money every month and didn't have a lot of control over the firing, so the results weren't quite like I wanted. So this L&L kiln and then my shed here was a labor in work and process. I'm still setting up the shed itself, but we had a couch in here and decided to take it out and just use the whole thing for crafting instead of crafting / guest house for now. So the first thing I'm doing is I am going to put kiln wash on the furniture that came with my kiln, and I've got the kiln wash mixed up here, right? It's about the consistency of, I'd say just like milk, like whole milk or so. And we'll brush it onto one side of all the kiln furniture. I've got this full round and then 2 other layers that are half rounds down here. I'm not going to put it on the stilts, just on one side of the actual shelves. So that will be my first step. And then we'll load the shelves along with the 2 little test level 5 cones that came with it and do a test firing before any real work starts. But first step is this. I'll check back in once it's ready and you can see what one of these looks like, and then we'll go over the loading process. Okay, I got the first kiln shelf with 3 layers of kiln wash painted on. This is what it looks like. This is one of the stilts, and this is what the material that the shelves are made out of, and the stilts look like without kiln wash, right? And here's what it is with the kiln wash. You can see it's not supposed to be pretty, so I don't mind that it kind of looks like Jupiter. And from what I've learned, kiln wash, you put this on your shelves, and it is a protective layer to catch any drips. So if you're using glazes that are known to run, and I've got a lot of those, the Amico brand PC glazes in certain combinations can be very runny. So drips are probably going to be a part of life, and if they stick to the shelf, the only way to get it off, because it's essentially glass at that point, would be to chisel it off, and you're going to wind up taking chunks out of your shelf at the same time and shortening its life. So kiln wash, when you put it on here, is like a protective layer between whatever you're firing and the shelf itself. So it's flaky, it'll get kind of worn out over time, which is one reason you don't want to put it on both sides, because if you put it on both sides, then as it's flaking, it could fall off onto whatever is in the shelves underneath it, your pottery, and stick to the glaze and mess up the piece, and you don't want that. So you really just put the kiln wash on one side, and it dries pretty quickly, but it's an important step to kind of save headaches that will be inevitable. So I've got the main shelf all covered with kiln wash. Like I said, I did 3 coats. One direction, rotated it, did the other direction, and then rotated again and did it back. So it's got 2 in this direction and 1 in that direction, which is kind of similar to if you're glazing your pottery. And then I will do the half shelves down below, and then we'll show you how I'm going to get set up for the test firing. Okay, I'm back. I will put some pictures in here that show how I loaded the kiln up for my test firing. There's 3 levels of shelves. The bottom level is the full shelf with 1-inch posts up and under it. You don't want to put it down directly on the ground or on the floor of the kiln, because you want air circulation underneath it. So they're on top of 1-inch posts. The second and third level are pairs of half shelves, and they are on top of 4, I think they're 2.5-inch and 3-inch posts. And the reason it's 4 is because we needed some support right in the center where the 2 half shelves meet, otherwise they would kind of tip over. And then on both levels, I put the cone 5 test cone and that came with the kiln, as well as a cone 6 test cone in there on the second and third levels. So I'm at the point now where I have programmed in the first test firing, and I'll go ahead and show you how that was done. To initially program it, I'm here on the home screen, and you can see this is what it's set up to do now. But if you wanted to see what it looks like when you're doing it manually, you would initially press on load, and then you would fill out all of these details based on what you want to do. So in this case, I'm going to do a 3-hour preheat. This is going to go up to cone 5 at a slow speed. There's not going to be a hold at the top, and there's not going to be any cooling. It's going to just cool naturally. And we can see what this looks like. They put a graph in here on the controller. This is what the temperature is going to do over time. You can see it's going to take about 17 hours or so, maybe a little bit longer. And there's also, it'll provide you with a table of what the temperature will be at the different points along the graph. So once you get all that saved, it'll show on the home page. And at this point, I'm going to press start, and that will actually begin the firing. Oh, actually, I can start it now. And I do have the remote app for managing this remotely set up on my phone, but I'm just going to go ahead and get it going now. That clicking that you hear is the relays that are firing, and the relays are what send the signals to the elements inside. And elements are like tightly wound coils of metal that go all around the inside on multiple levels inside the kiln and provide the heat inside for it. So the relays will go on and off, click on and off throughout this firing as they provide more heat to heat it up and maybe back off once it's hit the temperature on that graph that it's supposed to be at until it needs to go up or down. So my official first firing is underway, and like I said, it'll be about 16, 17 hours. I'll just stay out here with the kiln for a little bit of it and monitor on my remote app just to keep an idea of how it's going, and we'll see whether the witness cones that were placed in there bend where they're supposed to be, and if we need to make any adjustments to the thermocouples. All right, thanks. All right, 18 hours of heating and 24 hours of cooling off later. And my first test run on the kiln, I'm going to see how the witness cones turned out. I'm only going to show you the top layer because I can't run the recording here and take out the kiln shelves to get to the second layer. So I'll just send pictures of those, but here's the inside of it. You can see we've got the 2 witness cones down here. And I'll explain what we're looking for. So this is the cone 5 cone. And this one is cone 6. And what this tells me is that it got, with the heat work, it was a little bit more than a cone. It was almost a cone 6. So if the tip here was bent down to be even with that notch, then it would be a cone 6. So this was a hot cone 5, be a 5.5, like that, which makes sense because somebody pointed out to me later that I had this set up to run a bisque firing, even though it got to the same ultimate temperature as a bisque firing. I ran it as a glaze firing, which meant there was more heat work involved in it. So that's why it's slightly overfired, or an overfired 5 to almost a 5.5 or a 6, which is fine. I think the cones tell me that it's, at least on the top level, running where it's supposed to. So I will unload the top shelves and pull out the second cones and put a picture of them here so you can compare to how it ran on the top shelf versus the middle shelf, which I expect is going to show a little bit more heat work because the top tends to be one of the cooler zones within any given kiln, but maybe not on this one because it's got separate thermocouples for the different levels. So stay tuned for that. So these are the cones from the second shelf, and you can see they ran much hotter, probably, I would guess, 6.5 or so. So there we go.